Hello and welcome to the Miko Bits Show. And I am your host, Miko Bits. And here we cover all topics related to Bitcoin, blockchain, and DeFi. So if you're struggling to keep up with all of this big rush of new information, this is your channel. We almost on a bi-weekly basis now, we host leading minds from the Ethereum, DeFi, and blockchain community. And this week we have an exciting guest for you, Dmitry Buterin, who is the founder of BlockGeeks. And so we're going to learn a bit more about this organization, and we're going to learn a little bit more about what he's working on. So just as a quick disclaimer, this video is entertainment only. It's not investment advice. So anything we mention on the show shouldn't be taken as investment advice. So, without further ado, here's Dmitry. So nice to have you on the show.
Hey, Mika, good to be here.
Yeah, excellent. So, I would love to get a, bit of an introduction for BlockGeeks and a little bit about yourself and how you came to be doing this.
Sure. Grew up in the Soviet Union. Always was interested in technologies and computers and stuff like that, and hacking and whatnot. And studied computer science back in Moscow. Then started my first business, still back in Moscow. And moved to Canada just end of '99 when Putin came into power in Russia. And
wow,
lucky I was, that was a good call to be here, not in Russia. So I've been in Canada ever since. That's about 21 years. And I built a number of businesses in technology. And mostly I've been just good old tech, financial systems and custom web stuff and whatnot. And BlockGeeks is their latest business I'm involved in. We started about 4 years ago. It was really their idea that came from a friend of mine, Amir Rosik, and then I got involved and got my other friend Vladislav, my longtime friend and business partner, involved. So we started that, and I've been mostly just hands-off kind of investor and mentor sometimes.
Yeah.
But lately, as we are going through a restart of BlockGeeks, and we have some new people involved, and I'm also getting a bit more hands-on with the business. But for me, it's still more of a hobby, and but it's like hobby for me. It doesn't mean something less than anything else. Really, like I hope that everyone who is doing what they're doing this because they love it, not just because this will bring me to so much success and achievement and whatnot. Like I do stuff for fun, or at least this is kind of where I am.
Yeah. So tell me a bit about kind of who should be attracted to BlockGeeks. I know it's a pretty large community.
The original concept was really it was obvious again like 4 years ago already that the blockchain space is going to be huge, and there's a lot of development is going to happen. So we wanted to be the number one resource for educated developers, blockchain developers. That vision has evolved, and obviously as their blockchain is getting finally getting some adoption and recognition it deserves, the BlockGeeks is now looking much broader. We're looking to educate investors and traders and professionals, basically anyone who is interested in blockchain for whatever purpose, right? It's kind of like if you will, early days of the web. Web is just a tool, and then you can use it for all kinds of things, for fundraising, for a nonprofit, for running a business, for education, and so on, right? So yeah, that's BlockGeeks, and especially this year, I think that as we see in another ramp up of interest toward crypto and blockchain, and now DeFi specifically as a subset of this, and yeah, that's kind of our focus is shifting from towards especially like blockchain and stuff like DeFi and investment related topics and so on.
Yeah, and just for the audience, just for disclosure's sake too, I've joined the as a teacher in the Block Geeks investor curriculum. So just want to let people know, and
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about the upcoming investor curriculum.
Yeah, it's obvious that whenever prices go higher, right? Money is a topic that is very sensitive for many humans because it's so closely correlated to or closely connected to our desire to survive,
Yes.
to and thrive and whatnot, right? So when cryptocurrency prices are going up and lots more people are getting interested, right?
Yeah.
And obviously blockchain and crypto, it's a very complex topic and it takes time to understand, and for quote unquote normal person it's really hard to impossible, right? And then you see tweets like we saw yesterday from what's her name, Lindsay Lohan, this famous star, right?
Yeah.
And she's tweeting, oh, I'm into DeFi and I'm looking at this
Tron.
Tron stuff and Justin Sun and whatnot. I'm like, oh my god, right? Because if this is kind of what people end up looking at, they in for quite a bit of pain, right? So how can we help people understand the landscape better? Because crypto is such a rich uh, concept, if you will, or whatever you call that. But it's technology, it's community, it's marketing, it's memes, it's money, it's everything, right? So understanding all of those things. So for us, like the crypto investment school that we are running for the first time uh, this year is we want to give people broad understanding of different aspects of this. So for me, I think that before you go to micro, it's important to understand the big picture. So, and even in our dialogue, I think you will see that when you ask me a question, I always kind of want to start with a context, because quite often, if you just try to answer this particular question, but we might not have the same context, right? So, and again, so the idea of the course is really give people much broader context. How do they think about crypto and DeFi and investment and so on? And
Well,
so hopefully they can make better decisions. Yeah.
yeah, no, I love that because, I do think that, people do need an incredible amount of more richness of context. I know that one of the things I see increasingly in, my DeFi groups and, other places, is that people post questions like, what should I buy? And
Right.
those are very funny questions. And I'm oftentimes saying what you said about Lindsay Lohan. I mean, obviously she's a, wonderful actress and, has a great career and
Yeah.
whatnot. But, I think the thing that is true about her is true about just about anyone, which is, I always tell people when they ask, I always tell people, whatever random people on the internet tell you to buy, right? And obviously just very very joking, right? Very joking, but like,
Yes. Yeah.
it's funny, right? And I think one of the big concerns about random people on the internet is that it's a little unclear what their motivations are. Like, it's very possible that, the Tron marketing team has been, sort of
Yeah.
getting social media people, it could be paid advertisement, so
That would not be first. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, right. So like, and obviously, Tron has a funny reputation for that type of behavior. So, I
Yeah.
think that it's yeah, I agree, and I think people need to be careful, and that's a slightly kind of predatory thing, right? Which is, somebody's telling you to buy for their, and Adam, that's the reason why I begin my video with disclosure, and and whenever I talk about like, oh, I'm involved in this project in such and such a way, I just want everyone to know, right? I just want everyone to
Yes.
understand the
No,
ethics and
absolutely, right. It's really important for people to reflect on biases, right? Because
yes.
we all have them. People have biases, and we think that we're rational beings, thinking about stuff. I don't buy that. I think that we are really uh, beings driven by very complex, mind-body system, and emotions are a huge driver of that. So, much more than what we think our rational thinking system, right? And we have biases, and biases, like my bias, I have a bias, right? Because there's Ethereum, and Ethereum was created by my son. So obviously,
Yes.
I'm way more
You like
biased toward
Ethereum.
Ethereum. And then, yeah, exactly, right? Like, is that a surprise? Like, and I can say it's a bias, but also I can say that, oh, you know what? Like, I've known this guy for 27 years. So when people talk about, him being a scammer and whatnot, I'm like, yeah, okay,
you,
I haven't seen that, so, and
yeah.
let's say this whole concept of Bitcoin maximalism, right? It's
Yes.
like once we make a decision, it's really important for us to feel right about that decision.
Oh, yes.
Then our biases can kick in, and they really want to protect that decision, right? It's like, and this applies to anything and everything that we do. Like, for example, when I moved to Canada from Russia,
Yeah.
I could see that I I had a bias. I had to convince people that I made the right decision, right? That it was a good thing to move, right?
Yeah.
And so on, right? And again, Bitcoin, awesome, wonderful technology, and I love it,
Of
right? And
course.
then people who got involved with that early on, and if they end up not being mindful, if you will, of their bias, and then they see anything else outside of Bitcoin as a threat to Bitcoin, I can
Yes.
totally understand that perspective, right?
Yes.
But once our emotional bias is in play, then like I look at some of the guys in that space, like really smart guys, like
Yes.
Adam Back and
Oh, yeah.
whatnot, and they constantly bash on Ethereum. I'm like, oh
Yes.
my god, like guys, you're so smart, and then you cannot see your own biases. But I've been there, right? We all have those biases, and this is kind of what we have to keep in mind. And I think that, like, for investing, this is the number one thing before technology, before anything. Like, thinking and understanding your own understanding your own biases is way more important than anything you can learn about technology and whatnot, because there is very little chance that you will be able to grasp most of their technological stuff, right? So you will have to rely on experts in the field. Like, I barely understand, let's say, maybe 10% of this whole space, if that, right? But over time, I have developed a number of people kind of that I trust and follow, kind of rely on their judgments, and so on.
Yeah, yeah. That's there's a lot to unpack, And I think for me, when I see Bitcoin maxis, the thing that I think is very interesting is that there's a very much a focus on the scarcity, right, of the supply,
Right.
right? And I think what
Yes.
what 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 that generates is it tends to generate more like a zero sum process, right? So the mental process or framework around it is kind of zero sum. And one of the things I've noticed around the Ethereum community is that there's kind of a culture and an ethos of sort of positive sum, right? And the
Mm.
reason why there's a positive sum thesis is really related to kind of programmability, right? So when you think about kind of
Yes.
developer ecosystems and you think about the creation of potentially net new value, right? So, I mean, you're talking about software, right? So when people build software, they're actually building net new value because you're like, well, okay, what does this software do? Is it a game, or is it a collectible, or is it, what is it? Is it a financial service? Is it a DeFi? Is it lending? Like, what is it, right? And so I think that there's a positive sum element and a zero sum element. And the thing is that like in life and in economics, there are definitely zero sum elements and there are positive sum elements. So, I don't think I'm what I call an open source money maximalist, right? So
Hmm.
in my perspective, like, it isn't, it can't be, you can't really be stuck in either of these camps, right? But at the
Hmm.
same time, you have to honor these camps and be like really,
Yeah.
excited by them and excited for them, because obviously, it does seem like they're both mindsets are very fruitful so far.
Hmm. Yeah. No, totally. And I think that I'm an even more extreme maximalist than you are. Like, I believe in the unlimited power of silliness, of happiness, of love, and joy, and
Wow.
those kind of things.
Wow.
So, like, that's my foundation for anything and everything,
Oh,
right? And that's
wow.
also one of the reasons why Ethereum community resonates with me so much, because all of that, all of those logos and memes and all the fun and crazy
Rainbow
stuff. I just
unicorns.
love it, and I think this is probably you can see that in Vitalik as well. His t-shirts, his
Oh, the
bags, and
shirts.
whatnot. So I totally resonate with the very similar vibe.
Yeah, I was on I met him briefly on a boat outside of the consensus conference, CoinDesk consensus. I know he didn't really enjoy the conference so much, but he was in town,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
one of the things that struck me was he was talking about kind of gaming, video gaming, and
Mm.
he mentioned like World of Warcraft, and I guess he was like a gnome warlock, and he was talking about how his first exposure to practical economics, and he said in the form of pump and dump, was buying netherweave cloth on the game auction house, and it struck me as being a particularly cool perspective, right? And to me, what I'd love for you to kind of expand on is sort of this culture. I think the shirts, the unicorns, the rainbows, the logo, the name. Like I'd love to kind of have you unpack a little bit of that for us, because I think you're talking about the maximalism of like joy and silliness and this stuff.
Yeah, it's when I look back at the origins of Ethereum and I look at the number of people who were involved early on,
Yeah.
right? I do know that they explicitly discussed that one of the things that they were not too happy about. They were all involved in Bitcoin community, right? That was the
Yes.
original crypto community, and already then Bitcoin community sometimes could be abrasive. There was a lot of this kind of like biting, if you will, quality to conversations, right?
Yes.
And for many, especially again, I'm generalizing, right? But what can I do? Like a lot of the people involved in the space, they're very smart, software engineers and such. Kind of, you have to be smart. It's hard to develop to code if you're not.
Yes.
Um, and many of those people, they are introverts, right? So they're not really people who want this, yeah, conflict and fighting, right? So in some ways, many of them, they felt uncomfortable with their Bitcoin community because there was so much competitiveness and divisiveness, if you will. So specifically when they started Ethereum, they said, hey guys, let's this thing that we're trying to build, and which was at that time, just like a pipe dream, right? Oh, let's build this thing. But they said, okay, let's create a community which is based on openness and inclusivity, right? And I think this really became some of those things become crucial aspects of the foundation of the Ethereum community, right? And I have seen this many times actually in my life, because after building businesses over many years and looking at companies and looking at my friends, entrepreneurs, whatever you build, project, initiative, business, whatever, it will always be a reflection of you as a human being, right? That always happens, right? And Bitcoin was created by this anonymous person, and so it's really kind of hard to kind of that person, if you will, the energy that he put into this project. There was a lot of this stuff that people try to carry on, but in the Ethereum community, specifically Vitalik and some other early people,
Yeah.
they have this energy of openness and inclusivity, right? And this eventually propagated throughout the community. And community is never homogeneous, right? You will always find all kinds of people, and even if you take one particular person, like the person is not a static thing. It's a infinitely complex dynamic system which will react in different ways depending on the circumstances. But in general, that's kind of what I have seen. And I have to say that the shift in kind of what I've been more interested in the second, if you will, half of my life, or however much I have left, I'm much less inclined to go deep and look at technologies and analyze, whether this technology is better or not. But I think that I have much better intuition about people. And that's kind of like how I look at this. I look at the project like, does it feel good to me? Does it vibe the right way? And I see a lot of really amazing projects, a lot of awesome people in Ethereum space building cool stuff, and having those cool T-shirts. And I've been speaking for a long time, but it's I'm passionate about this. Like,
No, no,
one of the best
it's
events
yeah,
in Ethereum community is ETH Denver
yes,
annual hackathon, which is actually going on right now.
yes.
And the people behind it, John Paller, Justin Moskowitz, and a whole bunch of amazing people, they always do such a great job of having this event, making this event fun. It's total fun, like they had, like, even this year when they have to do it online, it's amazingly, it's a lot of fun. And the way they organize stuff, the way they're the kind of merchandise, the swag and whatnot. Like, half of my t-shirts are from East Denver or from the last few years, just because I love it so much, those pega buffer corns and whatnot. So yeah, I think that silliness and having fun and the power of joy is so much stronger than any kind of, if you will, achievement and success power on even just knowledge. Let's be serious and let's kind of know stuff.
I think this is a tremendous perspective. I really appreciate it. Here on the Miko Bits show, one of the things that we do is it is a long form program, and like I spend time just like you and I are spending time, with mostly kind of DeFi pioneers and founders, and in a sense, one of my major goals is to kind of enable everyone to kind of get a feeling. So to really
Yes.
kind of listen and
Yeah.
observe and kind of what does this person care about? Like, what do they talk about? What
Yeah.
do they focus on? Like, just really kind of like vibing with the person, right? Because a lot of my mindset in this kind of like the investment part of it is, obviously it's related to sort of earlier stage investing, and the mindset of kind of venture, which is the mindset that's so about founders. It's so about humans, and it's so about kind of where are they coming from and who are they, and I think that beyond that, obviously there's something much even bigger than that, right? Which is, when I talk about kind of like the investment paradigm, like for me, if you go to my website, one of the things that is, part of my ethos is I talk about, basically I say that open source financial infrastructure will make the world more consensual, fair, just, inclusive, transparent, and innovative, right? So
Yes. And
so that's where I'm coming from, right? So
yes, and that's kind of totally why I'm involved in this space, because again, we are all creatures which were formed by our foundations, like our genetics and our environment.
yes.
And I grew up in the Soviet Union, and I grew
Wow.
up with a lot of like propaganda, brainwashing, like communism and Lenin and blah blah blah. And I saw firsthand the failures of the centralized system, trying really hard and really messing up, everything you could think of, from, the way they were running education and army and just basic
Yeah.
manufacturing, like, shortage of basic goods and whatnot. So that really got me interested in understanding how the world works, and learning about the ways to develop better, more robust systems. And the way I think about this, like, think about a human being, right? If you had to think about all of the stuff you do, oh, let me beat my heart, let me breathe, let me, perspire, like, it's impossible, right? Like, so no, this is not how it works. You have a very resilient distributed system, and you have your heart, you have your nervous system, you have, like, hundreds, millions of systems and trillions of cells. They are all just kind of uh, working together. And this is what I'm seeing in this space, in decentralized space. And it's really fascinating to watch how DeFi has been emerging over the last few years, right?
Yeah.
Because, like, okay, so Ethereum, and slowly it's been built, and then there was this MakerDAO and some other stuff, and then Aave and Uniswap, and slowly, and then very quickly, and now we've seen this Cambrian explosion of things, and they crossbreed and interact, and SushiSwap does this, and like, it's so much fun to watch that. And in a way, it looks like a crazy game, right?
Yes.
But also there's this concept of genetic evolutionary algorithms. And I think this is pretty much what we see in happening here, right? And I also wanted to draw another parallel. In my experience in my career as an entrepreneur building businesses,
Yeah.
I also spent quite a lot of time thinking about hierarchies and organizational structures and whatnot.
Yeah.
And maybe about 5 years ago, one book really got me to start thinking about it in a very different way. And the book was Reinventing Organizations by Frederick Laloux. And the book was about, like I've heard before that, I've heard about holacracy and some other
Yep.
concept, but the book was, if you will, a meta framework about how can you build a non-hierarchical organization. And I read the book and I loved it, and it made total sense to me again, because I've been building tech companies and I have seen that hierarchies, they don't really work well for smart people, because when you're smart, the hierarchy is really about the concept, about this idea, oh, the guy at the top, he really knows what to do, and then he kind of tells everybody else what to do, and it's propagated down, towards all, the workhorses, the little guys. And this makes no fucking sense, because if you're a software engineer, you know way more than the CEO about so many things about this, right? If you're in customer support, you know way more about your customers. So how do you build an organization that is actually, instead of like being top down, it works in a similar way to human body or any kind of living organism, right? So for me, the allure of decentralized tech is really, how can we build better, more resilient, more fair systems? And one of the writers that I love is Nassim Taleb, right? And one
Yes.
of his books, he's got many awesome books. One of them that I love is Skin in the Game. And the book talks about how so many problems that we have in our society, they stem from the fact that our decision making is far removed from the consequences of our actions, right? And you're very nice, President Obama, making very nice speeches and doing whatnot. And you press this nice button, and then the drones, do this stuff in Afghanistan, and then kids die.
Yeah.
Like, fuck this system.
Yeah.
So let's build a system. If you make a decision which endangers lives of other human beings, you have to be connected to that. You have to be embedded. You have to be involved. And that's, for me, the decentralized system is really, decentralized tech is like, hey guys, let's build banks which are not run some assholes in suits, but let's build systems which are open, inclusive, and resilient, and open to everybody. People can interact with them. So yeah.
Ah, it's
Anyway.
so interesting. There's so much to unpack. Like, I actually read about actually one of the ideas that came up in the context of sort of thermonuclear war, which obviously kind of loomed over the United States and the Soviet Union back in the 1980s, right? And I think
Yeah.
that the thing that was fascinating about this was one of the proposed ideas. I forgot where I read about this, but the proposed idea was that in order for the president to launch nuclear missiles, they actually would have a volunteer, and the volunteer would volunteer to be murdered. And the approach would be that the president would have to murder this person in order to launch the missiles, right? And the theory, obviously, this was not an implemented government program like this.
Yeah.
This is a
Yeah.
thought exercise. But the idea of the thought exercise, of course, is that like if we're going to launch nuclear weapons, like you should probably be comfortable that you're killing people, and
Yes.
and if you're going, and so here's a volunteer, like kill this guy first, like kill the person's
Yeah.
like, I'm ready to be killed by you, go ahead, right? Like stab me with this
Yeah.
knife, kill me, and then you can launch your missile, and obviously nobody implemented this program, but like it's shocking and it's disturbing, and it's but I think as a but I think the idea of what you're describing is kind of like depersonalizing it, and clicking buttons, and that the implications of it are concerning, obviously.
Yeah.
It's crazy stuff. So so tell me about sort of I guess this BlockGeeks program, like how do you see when is it happening, and the investor program.
We hope to launch it probably in early March, and we actually have been assembling a really awesome collection of speakers. And thank you, Miko, for agreeing to participate. so that people who can talk to particular topics, some aspects of DeFi and tokenization of this, and the basics of blockchain. And I'm going to be one of the speakers, and that scares me a bit because I really have no clue what I'm going to talk about. But you know what? I'll talk about I'll talk humans. I'll talk about my own failures to be an investor and trader. Like I tried it for many years with regular stocks and whatnot, and I realized I suck.
I
So
love it.
like understanding yourself
Yes.
is really kind of where you want to start with whatever you're doing, whether that be an investment, and especially if that's been investment, right? And I think that for every human being, the most important thing is to understand themselves. What am I? Who am I? And stuff like that. And that applies to crypto, to investing, to relationship, to business, anything.
Well, and I think to me, one of the things that I really have enjoyed in this conversation, and and a little bit of the chat before the show, is that you are also embodying kind of a way of being, and it's a way of being that kind of is an aspirational way, right? Which is in a sense there's a transcendental way, or there's an aspirational way, in the sense that, like, yes, there is an investing thing, and people in different circumstances are going to need that, and the techniques, and they're going to need these abilities, right? But I think at the same time, when they do kind of satisfy those kind of worldly functions, that then there's a way of being where you can kind of move towards being satisfied and move towards being more joyful and more and kind of having some fun too. So I think
Sure, yeah. It's like I have seen that. Like I've seen, like, even looking back at myself, I had my first significant exit like maybe 15, 18 years ago. And you know what? I made a bunch of money and I haven't stopped for a single second. Like I haven't taken more vacation. I just took the money, put it into a new business, and kept doing the same thing because like this was my pattern, right?
yes.
And and when I sold my business, most recent business where I was hands-on operational before BlockGeeks, which was 3 years ago, almost exactly, and then I was there for 3 months, and then I just stopped. I stopped doing anything businessy. I
Yeah.
actually went for my Vipassana in Malaysia, and
Yeah,
I
meditation.
and I and BlockGeeks existed already, but I tried to not be involved as much as I can. Like left it in the hands of my friend who was Amir, who was running the business,
Yep.
and kind of went on a very deep internal journey. And also back to the money, right? I've seen people when they make lots of money, right? And they have this story: when I make this money, then I will do this. But your mind will always fuck you up, right? Because you will get to this point, it's like, oh, I have this money, and your mind like, oh, but inflation, kids, and blah blah blah, and Donald Trump. So you know what? You need actually twice as much money. Then you will be happy. Then you will do this, right? And we keep spinning in that, right? And
Yeah.
people have different types of this spin. Like within the concept of investment, it's really we're spinning in the story that when we get this much money, then oh man, I will do so much charitable stuff and whatnot. I will enjoy myself, right? Never happens, right? And some people spin in terms of like, oh, when I have this perfect person, or when I have kids, or when I live in a warm climate, like Toronto is bloody cold and snow. And I love it because, I found, my own joy and happiness. It's here. It's never defined by anything. And when we find that, then we're free to do anything that we want to do and for fun. And actually people are very much attracted to that energy because they can sense that. And I think my theory is that community, the Ethereum community, which kind of started to originally around Vitalik, you can see that inner freedom in Vitalik because he's the guy who cares about building this. He cares about the world. He doesn't care about money. Like, for a long time, he really owned like, one pair of pants, one pair of boots. He didn't care. And he was constantly traveling and building stuff. Like, and people joke about Lambos and whatnot. And when you see a person who is truly free, your system can feel that. Then you're like, I want what this guy have, right? Because you realize like, oh yeah, like my mind is kind of pushing me in this direction, and this guy doesn't seem to care. Like, what the hell? He should care about money and this and that, and he's not, right? That really kind of messes up with your system, and then makes you think. And those kind of people, when they find their internal power, their freedom, they are so attractive, because we all want that. That's really what we want. We want that freedom. We want that joy. That's like, we don't want, we think that we want money, whatever, but they are all tools that our minds explain to us that, oh, when we have this, then we will feel this way. No, like there's this guy in Russia, Navalny. He's the oppositioner, and he's been for many years working on exposing the corruption and the criminal actions of the Russian government. And they tried to kill him last summer, and he was in a coma. And after that, he went back to Russia, and they jailed him. And now they doing all this stupid, things with him. And you can listen to him speak. He's free, right? So all of those judges and whatnot, and he might get killed, but he's free. And people are attracted to that sense of freedom, sense of joy.
Yeah. And it's fascinating, the case of Navalny, and you talk about kind of like freedom and joy, but like in the case of someone like Vitalik, like you're saying, oh, he doesn't care about money. But like at the same time, if you look at the extent to which he has carefully built this around cybersecurity and how carefully he's built it to protect people's financial assets when they engage in Ethereum, right? So it's
what I meant is,
so it's very
money
secure.
Is not a personal motivation for him.
Right.
He understands that for human society, it's a very important motivation, right?
Yes.
And I still recall when, let's say 4 years ago, he was doing this lecture here in Toronto.
Yeah.
And he was talking about blockchain, but he was not talking like people, when they talk about blockchain, they start talking about all this technology and hashes and blah, blah, blah. He was talking about trust. Like, hey, do you trust that people want to make money? Do you want, let's start with that. And that's really the foundation of everything. Trust and our motivations, our desires, whatever they are. And Vitalik actually has he's done a lot of thinking about that, right? So I think that he's well versed in human motivations and fears. And I always enjoy reading his blog posts and stuff.
Absolutely.
They're full of deep insights.
Yeah. I very enjoyed the kind of end of the year blog post that he of 2020, and so it's a very but it's been an incredibly good conversation. Obviously we're connecting these two very disparate themes. Obviously there's kind of liberation and kind of joy and being and meditation, relaxation, and then there's also kind of like the seriousness, right? Like obviously we've talked about very serious topics as well, and in a way, like when you describe this kind of ideas of like cybersecurity and infrastructure and financial service and DeFi and Ethereum, again, like, these worlds do have to kind of like connect in order for there to be sufficiency, to be responsibility, to be trustworthiness, Absolutely. Right? So like this is, it's not about like being careless and being like, and causing, chaos, right? So I think it's a beautiful combination.
That's really important, because people think that if inside of their head they have this story, oh, I have to be serious, I have to be careful, and blah, blah, blah. They have all this anxiety.
Yes.
The story tells them, if you're being anxious, this is awesome, and this is how you achieve the best result. And this is bullshit. When you actually don't have that, when you have this internal peace, then you can be so much better, so much more careful, at doing whatever you do and achieving the result, right? So I'm not saying, oh, let's not care. Let's not at all. Let's care deeply. Let's care with all of our passion,
Yeah. And I think that if your mind isn't clouded, then you can very much stay very still, and you can very much kind of watch from a very quiet and still place and see how things are, and if you can really see how things are, then like you're in a neat spot. So really appreciate what I'm hearing. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation, and I hope that if you're listening and you're curious about any of these things, you should come check us out. Come join check out BlockGeeks. I think it'll be really fun and really interesting, and hopefully very helpful, because I think both
that's the idea.
We're absolutely kind of committed to being helpful. I think I was attracted to this program, I think, because of your personality online and just the ideas and so I think that this is you know I think it'll be a really a fruitful conversation. So really appreciate
Yeah,
being
thank you, Miko. That was a lot
invited.
of fun to chat with you, and I
Yeah,
enjoyed learning a bit more about you as well. So
fantastic.
yeah, looking forward to doing more stuff together.
That sounds great. Okay, terrific. Well, thanks so much, and that's it for our show.